Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Had Harem with 6 Girls Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The village hidden in the leaf was in a state of utter panic and chaos. The village looked as if it was engulfed by hell itself. All hell had broken loose when they had to suddenly defend themselves against a monstrosity the likes of which they could not be prepared for, bared down upon them in the form of the mighty Kyuubi no Yoko, the strongest of the 9 great Biju. There it stood with its 9 long tails, gigantic paws and muscle. Its sharp teeth glinting under the full moon and its blood-red eyes lit with a mixture of anger and curiosity, it let out a roar as the forest set alight. It was hell as the beast tore them to shreds with but a flick of its tails. Damn, we getting massacred out here, yelled a Junin as the beast sent out another blast of chakra taking the form of flames as it engulfs more buildings and trees, luckily devoid of civilians. Quickly get the wounded out of there. We have to hold out till Yondaime-sama can get here. The Junin bared at another Chunin that was the only thing keeping their hopes up. Hope that their leader will pull through and find a way to stop this monster. Kami-sama, we can't take much more of this. Hurry you're up Minato. We need your help now. Those were the thoughts of Sarutobi Hiruzen, former Hokage, as he helped his village hold off the beast. Hokage Tower. The youthful visage of Minato Namikaze was etched in a scowl holding his contempt and sadness at the current situation. They only received word a few hours ago of the Biju coming to attack them and what little defenses they could put up was crushed by the beast. Now a tenth of their village lie in ruins and his shinobi were being killed faster than an Uzumaki ate ramen. Minato knew that there was only one way of stopping the beast and that was sealing it away. That was what he needed to do, but that was easier said than done. For instance, the only seal powerful enough to seal the beast was deadly. Shiki Fuin the Reaper Death Seal. If using it you summon death itself to help create a powerful seal. The cost is one's life and soul, so he won't be surviving this plan. Then there's the container, which had to be a newborn child and only 3 were being born this night, which just with luck were his because his wife had just gone into labor a few hours ago. He was having triplets, a boy and 2 girls. His wife would be bringing their children, Naruto, Nariko and Nanami, into this world. He absolutely hated being in his position now. He would have to subject 2 of his children to the life of a Jinchuriki. A truly dangerous file filled with conflict. The heavy heart he bore, even knowing he had no choice, was almost too much for him to bear. If he wasn't going to die, his wife would surely rectify that. A cold shiver ran down his back. Hokage-sama. He looked towards his office door to see a man toss it open, a doctor out of breath, unable to get the words out of what he had to say, but he didn't have to. Minato knew his children were born. It's time, were his last thoughts before leaving. Hospital. Kushina Namikaze looked down smiling at the 3 bundles in her arms. On her right was little Naruto, who was almost the splitting image of his father. With blonde locks strewn about his little head, the only thing that he had of hers though was her beautiful violet amethyst eyes, but his were practically glowing like gems from what little glimpses she was able to get from them during his short life, and had whisker marks on each cheek from being exposed to the yokai hours earlier when she first went into labor, and his sisters also had them. In the middle was little Nariko, who, like her Aniki, she also looked a bit like their father with blonde hair, only she had a few red streaks and she had navy blue eyes a few shades darker than their father's. On her left was little Nanami, who, like her sister, had both blonde and red hair, only she had more red than blonde and had identical eyes like their father. Both girls had quite a bit of energy from how long it took for them to go sleep. The 3 babies stirred uneasily and she could tell why. The Kyuubi's malice could even be felt from here. Shish, it's alright little ones, mommy's here, she'll protect you, she won't let anything happen to you, my little angels. The babies settled down, soothed by the voice and love of their mother. Despite seeming calm and joyful, Kushina was anything but the emotions she was showing. In this situation she was fearful. Their home was under the assault by a monster. Kushina was a powerful ninja in her own right. She had earned her nickname as the Red Death throughout her ninja career, but even she, an A- rank bordering on S rank ninja, wouldn't want any part in fighting such a powerful creature. She only prayed her husband would find a way to stop the crisis. The door opened and in came a figure that was a sight for sore eyes. Wearing his own fragile smile just like the one she knew she was wearing, was her husband. Minato. He came up beside her all the while his eyes reflected affection for her and their children. Aren't they beautiful? Asked Kushina. They perfect, was the loving response she got from her husband. They then spent a few moments just watching as the children slept. To them it was a fleeting vision of perfection that made them feel fulfilled. But Minato knew he would have to ruin this moment of peace for the sake of his home. Kushina, he called. The said woman looked at her husband, hearing the pain in his voice. I'm going to have to use that seal. I'm going to have to use the Shiki Fuin to seal the fox. As a response, his wife could only gasp after she got a hold of herself. No, I will not have you use our babies for that, never. Minato sighed. He knew this was going to happen despite them both being masters of Fuinjutsu, therefore easily able to figure out what must be done. His wife would deny the necessity of making a Jinchuriki. She always was the hopeful and dreaming one out of the two of them while he took up the job of the realist. We have no choice, nothing else can stop it, we have to do this for the sake of the village and our children. At this his wife's face twisted in pain, like the thought of it caused her physical pain, and she started crying. Then why do you have to die? She looked up with a tear-stained face. Why do our babies have to grow up without their two-san? Minato himself had to hold in his own tears as he answered his wife's question. Because it is my duty as Hokage and a father. Kushina lowered her head in resignation. Minato then took his daughters and said a parting word to his wife and son before proceeding to walk out the room. Normally he would have Hirashin away, but it just didn't feel right at the moment, and as he walked away he heard his wife say, I love you. Battlefield. Hold it off, was the cry of the shinobi as they fought the mighty fox. They had managed to get it all the way to the edge of the village thanks to their previous Hokage showing them just way he was, and still is called Shinobi no Kami. Suddenly there was a pillar of smoke and Gamabuta the chief toad attacked the fox, pushing it back even more. The crowd cheered for their Hokage. Though Sarutobi knew what was happening by the bundles in Minato's arms. He knew he was still needed, and he only hoped his wife and children would forgive him for what he was about to do. He called Kakashi, who was still fresh for battle because he was kept back because of his age. So he made his way to Gamabuta. Minato, let me do the sealing. You have so much you still have to do. Sarutobi said, trying to make the younger man change his mind. However, Minato shook his head, stating that he was the Hokage and he had to do this himself, and the two men bowed their heads, but a split second later Sarutobi appeared behind him and knocked him out, taking the girls from his arms. Kakashi, keep him safe while I finish this. And Kakashi, tell my wife and kids I'm sorry. The young man could only nod, still shocked about all of this. While Hiruzen summoned Enma the Monkey King, who said his goodbyes to his old friend. Sarutobi soon summoned the Shinigami, the Lord of Death, who quickly understood what he was supposed to do, while the fox suddenly calmed down as if understanding what was going to happen and was allowing it to happen, as if it had a choice in the matter at all. Fuin. With that cry a great white flash happened, and when it was gone the fox was no longer in sight, and the two girls had two seals, one on each of their stomachs. As they cried, being woken up, a great man had fallen and lie still on the ground. Enma gave a pained sigh, letting a single tear fall before going back to his own world to mourn. Meanwhile Minato Namikaze began to stir as he woke up, being held up by his student just in time to see the Enma disappear. He saw Sarutobi's unmoving form and the absence of the Kyuubi, and he put two and two together and jolted from where he was being supported. He ignored his student calling him and rushed to where the two girls. The deed was done and he could not change it, so he picked up his daughters and looked down at the third still form. Thank you, were the last words he spoke to the man who just saved his life. Hospital. Kushina Namikaze saw the end to the fighting and realized what that must have meant, as was the evidence of her crying. Just then the door opened up and she saw someone she did not think of ever seeing again, her husband holding their daughters in his arms. Her crying stopped as he walked up to her, neither doing anything, as they looked awkwardly at each other, neither knowing what to do, until Kushina laughed and engulfed her husband and daughters in her arms, holding their children between them as they cried tears of joy. Their family was not destroyed. Later a village meeting was held early in the morning. Minato stood holding his daughters while a little ways back Kushina held their son Naruto. Good people of the leaf, I know you all are in pain now with the loss of so many and the destruction brought about by the Kyuubi, but please do not sadden. We have survived thanks to the sacrifice of so many, and we have made it through to a new day, and we can rebuild what we lost. At this the crowd cheered from the conviction in their leader's voice. In fact, I hold here in my arms two heroes along with the help of the late Sandaime Hokage, who gave his life to save this village by sealing the yin and yang into these two girls, my daughters Nariko and Nanami Namikaze. At this the people broke into another cheer, not doubting the words of their cage, even though a few that did were pulled into the shadows and had it beaten into them. Later that night, Minato and Kushina watched their children sleep in their crib cuddling with each other. For them this was the perfect moment in all their lives, finally everything was perfect. For them nothing could ruin this for them. Little did they know certain things will change everything and only destruction would await if things went down a bad path. Life was a bitch and they were about to learn it was always the calm before the storm. Had been quite a few years since the fox attacked the village. The people of Konoha still mourned the dead, but they already started rebuilding their village, and by now the village was back in top notch, especially with their trade line in Nami no Kuni. Everything was going so well, this went double for the Namikaze family. Namikaze compound. Currently Kushina was watching over the three kids while they each did their own things, while she was sitting with Makoto Uchiha, her best friend since the academy. Meanwhile Makoto's sons were also there seated with them watching the three other children. Kushina-chan, your kids sure are energetic. I almost feel sorry for you, but then again they inherit that from you. Although Naruto-kun seems a bit out of place, rather choosing to sit under a tree and read. He's such a quiet child, he reminds me of Itachi-chan being so mature. I bet you proud of him. Makoto stated in a happy tone. While Itachi sighed, his mother was just so blunt. Well, Makoto-chan, he has always been so quiet and he always head stuffed in books. Honestly dunno what to do anymore. Even Minato wasn't this quiet when he was younger. For once I wish he could maybe communicate more with his sisters. Kushina sighed in exasperation, which the other woman looked confused at. Why? Does Minato feel the same way? Doesn't he communicate well with them? I know Itachi-chan was like him a little, but he knew how to communicate with his cousins at least, asked Makoto, wearing a frown on her face. Meanwhile, although Itachi wasn't one for trouble and eavesdropping, he couldn't help listening in on his mother's conversation with the Udime's wife on the 4-year-old boy who sat in the shade of a tree a little ways from where they sat, with a book in his hands. It's not that he doesn't communicate well with them, because he does, it's just ever since he could talk properly he always complains when one or both of his sisters sleep next to him. He always says it hurts or it burns, but the doctors say he's fine. I can't help but think maybe he doesn't like his sisters. This was said with a tone of hurt by Kushina, and Makoto frowned more. I don't believe this. There's something else at play here. I've seen the boy's eyes every time he looks at them. There's nothing but love and kindness in those amethyst eyes of his. While Makoto thought upon this, Itachi had similar thoughts. Something's just not right here. Itachi's own thoughts were also analyzing the situation, and he knew what it was. It was on the tip of his tongue, but he just couldn't get it. Meanwhile, young Naruto sat under the tree reading up on advanced chakra manipulation. Chakra can sometimes change forms when trying to shape it. Firstly, you need an understanding of how it works and what makes chakra up and how it can be broken down. So Kushina-chan has Minato and you started with their training. I know Sasuke started his training just a week ago and he's coming along nicely. Makoto asked, trying to lighten up the mood, and Kushina nodded. Yes, we have. Minato decided he was going to train them in ninjutsu, chakra control and taijutsu, while I train them in fuinjutsu, genjutsu and kenjutsu, and we'll both be training them in weapons. Kushina said, brightening up with a grin. Wow. Well, how far are they with it? I'm sure they all took to fuinjutsu like fish to water. This, however, Makoto found was not the right thing to say, as this brought Kushina to frown deeply. When it comes to ninjutsu, the girls excels, learning at a quick rate, while Naruto also excels in it. He doesn't get it down as fast as they do. However, when it comes to chakra control, he is leaps and bounds in front of them because their control sucks. Then there's taijutsu. The girls are great because of their physical condition, but Naruto, while he is very good for his age, he just never wins against them. Again, the girls suck at fuinjutsu and genjutsu, which he excels at, and the same with taijutsu could be said about kenjutsu, but I'm proud of my girls. At this, Makoto once again frowned at Kushina. Can't see her son as a genius and a hard worker. Makoto thought, shaking her head slowly at her best friend. One day Kushina-chan, this is going to come back and bite you. Meanwhile Itachi was shocked and impressed. The 4-year-old was very smart and he found himself all the more curious about this child. A month later, Naruto walked down the street of Konoha on his way to buy some ice cream from one of the stands to cheer him up, also as a reward for a chakra control exercise that he learned all by himself. As he patted his wallet, Panther-chan, he couldn't help but think about all the changes with his ninja training during the past month and he frowned. To-san, Ka-chan, why do you favor Nariko-chan and Nanami-chan more than me? This was his thoughts as he thought about the past month. Flashback. A day after Makoto and her sons came by, Minato and Kushina called a meeting in Naruto. Nariko and Nanami sat side by side on the couch before their parents. Alright kids, your Ka-san and I have decided to change your training a bit. Firstly, we decided to hold off Fuinjutsu, Genjutsu and chakra control for a few more years. Another thing we have decided, since the girls hold the Kyuubi's chakra, they had to be trained first, so Naruto, we won't carry on training you until you all start the academy. Minato said happily, even though he just unknowingly hurt his only son by doing that, but the girls cheered and Kushina smiled, but Naruto frowned deeply. Ka-chan, To-san, how come the things I'm really good at are put on hold, and why is my training on hold just because the girls hold the Kyuubi's chakra? Why not hold off on the things that they excel in? Naruto asked, wearing the same deep frown, not understanding why his parents would stunt his growth. Naruto Namikaze, stop being so selfish. We are doing this because your sisters need it more. And they will be targets. Kushina said in a disapproving tone, scolding her son, while Minato frowned at Naruto and the girls grinned. But Ka-san, what about me? Naruto never got to finish as his mother yelled for him to shut up and go to his room and not come down until she told him to, because she wasn't gonna tolerate any back-chatting. So he dutifully got up, ignoring his sister's looks of satisfaction, and went to his room and cried himself to sleep. The following weeks were hell for him, because every time his sisters made sure to get him into trouble, and their parents didn't believe when he said something and his sisters said differently. End of flashback. Naruto was so consumed by his thoughts he never noticed the old lady walking in front of him. Meanwhile, Elder Katsume Kurama of the Kurama clan was taking a stroll around the village to stretch a bit. The elder was currently dressed in what seemed to be a brown traditional kimono with a dark pink obi with white petals decorating it at the sleeves and bottoms. Her gray, brown hair was pinned up in a bun and her honey-colored eyes shone with happiness. Oof. Who the heck do you think you are bumping into? Oh, it's just a brat, the Kurama huffed and was about to carry on walking. That is until. Hey, what's that supposed to mean? Naruto shouted in a burst of rare childishness, momentarily forgetting about apologizing to his elders. That young man was supposed to mean you just a snot-nosed brat. And you have no right to speak to your elders in that manner. Especially a clan elder of the Kurama clan. Elder Katsume barked at the 4-year-old boy, while a twinkle of amusement shining in her eyes. While Naruto just realized he was shouting at an elder and took a step back before bowing low to the woman. I'm so sorry, Elder-san. It was wrong and unjust to speak in the manner of which I have. And I should not have done so, but I was so unfocused and in my own thoughts. Please let me make it up to you. These were Naruto's words as he bowed, and the elder put on a thoughtful face as the boy looked up at her with his amethyst eyes. Alright, now we are talking. How about I some dango? Then I'll share my wisdom with your young mind. Sounds fair enough. Katsume spoke with a glimmer of curious mischief. Yes, Elder-san. That sounds fair enough. Naruto replied, happy that he won't get into trouble, and perhaps get some advice on genjutsu from this woman. After all, she came from the Kurama clan, and by the way she dressed you could tell she's one of their elders. So slowly the two made their way to the dango stand. You can cut the crap with Elder-san. The name's Katsume Kurama. And you are brat? She asked him, and he paid for the dango they bought. Naruto Namikaze. Elder, I mean Katsume-san. Came the response, and now know who she was talking to. She let out a small laugh but also grew curious. Say brat, I bet Hokage-sama and his wife has already started with your training, right? Which category do you excel in? She asked, not caring about clan stuff. She was never one for technicalities. Yes they have, but, well, I guess I excel in Fuinjutsu, Genjutsu, Chakra Control and Kenjutsu. Naruto said with a slightly sad tone which made Katsume raise a brow, surprise and impression but also confusion. Really? I'm sure your training is going well then, she said, chewing on her dango with hawk-like eyes that only a trained ninja could. Actually, I was going to ask you for some tips on genjutsu because my family, you see, they more busy training my sisters, and so my training was put on hold, but I still want to train, and I know you from the Kurama clan too. Naruto trailed off, having the decency to look ashamed, but there was a bitter glint in his eyes which darkened ever so slightly. What he said sent Katsume for a loop. Were his parents playing favorites? This left a funny taste in her mouth. Well, if that's the case, I suppose I can give you some advice on that subject, but first, how much do you know about genjutsu? At this, she watched as his eyes lit up like a kid at a toy store. Genjutsu is mostly to do with the mind and causes one's mind to hallucinate, and is mostly used to distract the enemy to take them out of battle quickly, and is not something used by many ninjas. Naruto said this with confidence. While Katsume smiled, not many children outside of our clan knows that. You know what, brat? I like you. Good job. Yes, that's what genjutsu is, but genjutsu is not like all the others. This is more like an art than anything else because it's only as good as the caster's imagination and willpower. Therefore, why many people can only do the simplest genjutsus and don't study further into it. Genjutsu is something that you can't really master because of the limitless opportunities there are. In my clan, for one, we all study the art of genjutsu, and it runs through our veins to know the hows and whys of it. However, every decade there is someone born within our clan who can not only use illusions, but the illusions they use can cause physical damage to the body. See where I'm going with this? Genjutsu is something that can't be taught by someone, it's something you make from scratch. Therefore, genjutsu is the ultimate jutsu which depends on the person's control, will and imagination. Katsume told him, which he sat wide-eyed with awe and wonder, so she mentally gave herself a pat on her back, thinking it was the same conversation she had with her granddaughter, Yakumo, a few months ago. Wow. Do you think I can become a genjutsu specialist? He asked hopeful, and she just chuckled at him. He was one interesting brat, perhaps she could help him out just a little. Yup, if you practice hard enough and have the determination and imagination for it, I'm sure you can become a master in your own way. No doubt about it. She said this while ruffling his hair a little, and he beamed up at her. Well, brat, it's time I get home. I still have a granddaughter to talk to. It was nice meeting you. Good luck and thanks for the dango. The elderly woman said before getting up and walking away, not before she left a plain-looking scroll in his hands. Naruto looked at the scroll in his hands and read the title. Iryujin Gijutsu. Chen, Illusion Technique. Chains. A huge smile flashed across his face, and he ran out the stand and seen the lady in a distance. Thank you, he yelled to her, and she turned around, flashing him a peace sign before walking on her way back to her clan compound, leaving Naruto to stare after her. 2 months later. After meeting Katsume Kurama, it seemed to Naruto that was where his luck stopped, as not even a day later he drew a picture of his family and left to use the toilet, only to come back and see his parents praising Nariko about his picture that she claimed was hers, and because he confronted her about it, he got punished by picking weeds for the next 2 days. Then Nanami breaks their mother's vase because she was running, and he gets blamed for it just because he was there and they didn't believe him, so he was punished once again because Nariko and Nanami can do no wrong. That wasn't fair at all. Of course, things looked like they were looking up for him when he found his father's Fuinjutsu book and decided to keep it, and he was coming along nicely for being self-taught. I mean, how many 4-year-olds can say they know how to make storage seals? Though it seemed to him that his sisters were trying to make his life a living hell, and throughout the past 2 months he found himself being excluded from certain activities or being punished and called a liar. It had become so bad that for the first time Kushina raised her hand and brought it down on her own son, all things that left him bitter and hurt. He had slowly come to hate his sisters, especially since the past month was their birthday and the girls banned the other clan children from being friends with him. Flashback. It was their 5th birthday today, and he felt like nothing could bring down his happy mood today. Things were finally looking up for him. Oh, how wrong he had been. How very wrong. Outside. Everyone, I have an announcement to make. Firstly, thank you for coming. And then secondly, Nanami and I are banning anyone who wants to be friends with us to be friends with Naruto because he's mean. Nariko stated, clapping her hands together with Nanami at her side, nodding in conviction. The other kids all looked confused at this but walked over to the girls even though some threw apologetic looks while he looked hurt and confused. He didn't say or do anything to them. End of flashback. That had been truly hurtful and sad for the blonde. Currently the girls and Naruto were unpacking the groceries for their mother as she went back to the market for something she forgot. Suddenly out of pure reflexes he pulled Noriko out the way as a kunai embedded itself into the wall and a ninja with the headband for Iwa with a slash across it, appeared and started chasing the three of them who were now running almost to the gates of the compound. Both girls were so scared that they tripped and fell. This made Naruto turn back for them and he took two kunais for them. He turned around just as the shinobi brought down his kunai to cut the blonde. Naruto, who was running on adrenaline, ran through seals as fast as he could and set the genjutsu he had been working on for the past month on the shinobi, who stopped dead in his tracks and fell to the ground. Just as Naruto passed out, he could only think one thing before joining his sisters, who were both unconscious from shock. Ten no Shogai no Rakuen, success, heaven's false paradise. But of course when they woke up everyone had come to a conclusion that the fox cast the genjutsu on the man to protect itself, and once again his sisters took his credit because of the fox. This had left him bitter and angry, and for the first time he could honestly say he hated his sisters with all his being. However, something far worse was going to happen which would just nail the coffin shut and completely destroy this so-called happy family. All this would soon take place on the triplets' 7th birthday. Soon a legend would be born and a prophecy would come to play which will leave earth-shattering revelations. The sun slowly made its way into the sky and was shining, as people and shinobi started about with business. After all, they had a festival to set up because today it was the day the Sandaime defeated the Kyuubi and sealed it into the Udaime's daughters. It was also their birthday as well, and many people bought a gift for each girl. Hospital. 10th floor. Head medic's office. Humph. Shizune. Come look at all these people. Walking around without a care. Buying gifts for those two brats. This was stated by a blonde-headed woman who looked to be only in her early 30s, her honey golden brown eyes narrowed in contempt at the villagers as a black-headed woman walked in the office. Her dark brown, almost black-eyed held the same emotions. Hi, Tsunade-sama. It's as if they forget the Udaime has a son too. It's honestly shameful. Those girls think they will be able to outshadow Naruto Otudo. They have another thing coming. He is so much better than them. How Hokage-sama and Kushina-san can't see this is beyond me. Jiraiya-sama is even ashamed. He said every time he tries to include Naru-chan they either get distracted by the girls or they brush it off and say Naruto's too busy stuffing his heads in books and pranking people. Even when we say he's not like that, they always saying he's my son, I should know. Yet they know nothing about him. Poor Naruto-kun. If I didn't still think they loved him a little, I'd say they'd forget him one day, and I doubt things would be the same again. Even while Shizune said this, it was like fate was laughing at her, because soon she and everyone would find out just how true her words were and how it would soon bring about changes, and big ones too. Tsunade sat with a cup of sake in her hand, twirled it around. If Shizune and her weren't so busy with the research lab today, they would sure go over to get Naruto, who she saw as a son, and celebrate with him. However, this was called in as an emergency that couldn't wait. She looked over at the cupboard on the side. Inside she had put the gifts Shizune and she bought for him. Maybe when they got out this hospital later today she'll drop them off with an apology. I wish we weren't called into the research department today. We could have celebrated with Naruto. Tsunade sighed when she said this, and Shizune suddenly looked downtrodden before shaking her head. Well, let's get going. The earlier we start, the earlier we get to see Naruto-chan. Shizune said with conviction as she pumped her fist into the air, and you could practically see the stars in her eyes. Tsunade grinned. Hi, let's go, Shizune. Shocking Shizune out of her mental state, the two left the office with the hope of seeing their surrogate son and brother. Unknown to them, the next time they saw him they would shed tears of horror and sadness. Namikaze compound. Minato and Kushina lie asleep on their bed. Well, they were asleep until the door was roughly tossed open. With the slamming noise and the two yells of Ka-san and Tu-san, the parents were rudely awoken. Good morning, my angels. What do we owe the pleasure of this visit? Minato's annoyance was covered up nicely. After all, who likes being rudely awoken? Especially when dreaming of making his family bigger. Tu-san, you promised to take us to all our friends. Then go to the festival. Nanami's whiny voice was heard loud and clear as if speaking in a microphone, and Minato and Kushina inwardly flinched. Yaka-san. Can we go now, please? Noriko, with her apparently adorable puppy dog eyes, quickly took her parents in the palm of her hands. With that, the two girls had them and almost everyone else wrapped around their pinky. Meanwhile, in another room not too far down from their parents' room, on a small bed lay Naruto, who was still asleep, and the reason for this was that he had stayed up the whole night working on a new genjutsu that could make him invisible to the world and that everyone will forget about him, well except the people who actually care for him. All the while Noriko and Nanami dragged their parents out the house. When they were done, Naruto slowly came to when the front door closed. Ah, stupid Naruto. Don't stay up so late, especially when the next day is your birthday. Tsunade-ka-san would have your hide for this. Ah, wait a minute. Naruto, who was ranting and raving, suddenly realized the front door had banged shut, which had awoken him. Naruto ran to the cold window that had frost on it just to see his sisters and parents walking away from the house, all dressed up in nice warm mittens and scarves around their necks. He was shocked. Did they forget about him? Why were they leaving him at home? How could they be so cruel? Without knowing it, he had lost all sense and started running down the stairs on the cold wooden floor before tossing the door open and running out of the house. Meanwhile, Minato and Kushina were already almost out the gates without paying any attention to the surroundings and only on the girls. They finally stepped out the compound gates. That's when Minato and Kushina activated the seals on the compound. Not knowing this would be their biggest mistake ever. With Naruto, he ran with his left arm braced in front of him, getting ready to push open the compound gates that just shut. Unknown to him, or maybe at the moment he forgot that there were seals on the gate. The minute his hand touched the just activating seals, a chakra surge happened and the gate's seals that thought his arm was an extension of the pathways for the seals pumped an almost ungodly amount of chakra through his arm. In a sudden explosion of blood, the white snow covering the pathway was suddenly a blanket of blood, while Naruto, who was thrown back by the gate, cried put painfully. With tears running down his face, he looked in horror at his left arm, which lay limply at his side. The blood oozing out was way too much and the pain was more than terrible. Naruto slowly gathered himself and ripped off his pants pipe and used it as a makeshift band-aid. He slowly made his way to the house, only to find out he couldn't get in because the same seals on the gate were also on the house, meaning he couldn't get into the house now. He chuckled bitterly. On his 7th birthday they forget about him. And even if he screamed for help, he knew no one would hear him. After all, there were silencing seals on the compound because of the girls who made noise, and especially when they were babies, because the girls screamed and cried, waking their neighbors up. Research Department. A shiver ran down Tsunade's back, a feeling of dread pooled in the pit of her abdomen. She tried to shake it off, yet it seemed as if it didn't want to leave, and she couldn't help but think something bad just happened. Tsunade-sama, are you alright? You look like you dazed out there. Is something bothering you? One of the male medical researchers asked her, and she shook her head. No, everything's fine, Dai-san. Why don't you get the laser so we can finally try cutting this piece of shit open? I don't have all day to spend in this place. She barked at him and he quickly got going to get that laser. While Tsunade looked down at this glowing purple rock the size of a boulder, for some odd reason this thing had just appeared out of nowhere, so they were tasked with finding out what it meant. Little did they know what they had in their midst. Hyuga Compound. Neji ni. A small girl with navy blue hair called out to a boy with dark brown hair. They both shared the same pupilless eyes, but while his was gray, hers was lavender. Hi Hinata-sama, what's wrong? The boy, no more than recently turned 8, asked the girl identified as Hinata, who wore a light purple kimono. I'm having another vision. Naruto-kun's left arm is all bandaged up and he's kneeling on the ground crying, and there's red all around him like it's trying to consume him. Hinata's eyes glowed a silver, white color before going back to lavender, and she stared at the boy who had quickly came to her side. Naruto. Why's his arm bandaged? Why's he crying? Neji asked. He remembered Hinata and he met Naruto back when Hinata was 4 and he himself was 5. Some boys were bullying Hinata when he had arrived there to stop them, but he was beaten to the punch by a blonde-headed boy who saved Hinata. So from that day on, Hinata and himself had become friends with Naruto quickly. I don't know Neji ni. But he looked so sad. The girl cried out into her cousin's chest. Namikaze Compound. Naruto sat outside as the sun started setting. He let out a bitter laugh. I can't believe it, even after they forgot about me I still hope deep down they'll come back, but it's been 10 hours and I feel so cold. I wonder, would my sisters be happy if I died? Naruto couldn't help but think these things. After all, he lost too much blood and it was getting colder by the minute now that the sun set. 6 hours later, an hour before midnight, Naruto let out a cough. He looked like he was wearing a white full-body suit, however this just happened to be a thin layer of frost coating his body while both arms lay limp at his side. His lips were purple and his skin tone looked like a bluish mixed with peach, his hair no longer the bright sun-kissed yellow, now it was a dull yellow. Gem-like amethyst violet eyes peeked from behind his eyelids. If you looked closely you would see a broken soul. He glanced at the sky, seeing a full moon with brightly lit stars in the sky, and fresh tears rolled down his marked cheeks. If this is how my life ends, well damn, what a life, neglected for my sisters, ignored by most of the other clan children, ah what a life. My only friends Hinata, Neji and Itachi. Jiraiya Ero, Tsunade Ka-chan, Makoto Ka-chan, Katsum Oba, Bawako Oba, Shizune Ne, Anko Ne, Tuki-san and Ayame-chan. I'll miss you, Naruto thought as he felt a tremor wreck his small body that he couldn't feel anymore. Slowly a bittersweet smile made its way across his face, his eyes dimmed slowly, losing all the life they once had, and just as the fireworks went off exploding in a shower of different colors, the last bit of life left his eyes and his pulse stopped. Festival. Minato and Kushina had gotten all the clan children and the children played while the parents got drunk, except for the Uchihas because Itachi just came back from a mission. Fugaku was stuck doing paperwork, Makoto believed she had a stomach virus, and Sasuke was sick with flu. The Hyuga cousins were watching and looking where Naruto was because they only arrived a few hours earlier at like 5 because their father was called to a meeting quickly by the elders, and when they arrived they thought maybe Tsunade was with him or had him somewhere, but now that the fireworks just went off and everyone was gathered around, neither Hyuga could spot Naruto anywhere, and that left a sense of dread in their stomachs, especially since Hinata's vision. Poof. Suddenly white smoke covered the area and out popped Jiraiya of the Sannin, grinning like a mad thing as both Noriko and Nanami ran over to him demanding what they got for their birthday, and everyone else surrounded. Now children, because Minato is my student I will be allowing you to sign the Toad contract. Now where's Naruto? I want him to sign first, after all he was born 5 minutes before you girls. Naruto, you brat, where are you? Kushina, Minato. Where is the brat? I know Shizune and Tsunade's at the research department. This question was answered with a deadly amount of silence which left Jiraiya uneasy. Minato and Kushina paled while Noriko and Nanami looked a little angry but also devious. Oh my gosh. Minato, we forgot him at home. Let's hope he didn't trash the house. You know how he pranks. He'll probably forgive us when we let him sign the Toad contract. Let's go home quickly, Kushina said, and all the clan mothers looked at her in shock. How could she forget her own son? Minato nodded and they all, including the other clan heads and their children, made their way to the Namikaze compound, not knowing the horrifying scene that shall forever be embedded in their memories. Uchiha compound. Makoto decided since she was feeling better she would drag Itachi, Sasuke and her husband to the Namikaze compound, thinking that they will meet the family along the way to give their wishes, not knowing Itachi's life would change to the event he was about to witness. Namikaze compound. The minute Minato and Kushina opened the gates they were hit by a heavy smell of iron, a smell they knew all too well. The children let out screams at the horrifying bloody gates and snow-covered pathway that was now looking like a bloody puddle. Before anyone could do anything, Hinata and Neji ran in a certain direction of the gardens in the compound. Itachi and Makoto soon followed not a minute later, and after knocking the other children out they all ran in the same direction as the others, only to come to a sudden stop as they gazed upon the scene. Naruto-kun! Hinata yelled as she dropped to her knees, tears free falling from her eyes, and Neji stood behind her throwing up and crying too. Makoto was no better than Hinata, she too was on her knees. Itachi was too, but his eyes changed. First it flashed red, then it turned into his Sharingan with 3 comers before it turned into what looked like a windmill shuriken, but only the legs were longer and sharper looking than a shuriken. The scene before them made their hearts stop for a moment. There, under the same tree that he sat under when he was 4 reading about advanced chakra manipulation, was the figure of Naruto, blood red snow beneath him. His now lifeless amethyst violet eyes were half open as if staring back at them accusing, and the bittersweet smile he wore was still upon his face as if frozen for eternity. My baby. Makoto cried out, sobbing while shooting up and running to him and clutching his small frozen frame against her own bigger one, running her hand through his now dulled blonde hair. It's going to be okay. Honey, Ka-chan's here, baby, Ka-chan's here now, everything will be fine. She sobbed, rocking back and forth while one thought ran through the other clan's heads. Why is Makoto crying like he's her son? Poor woman looks distraught, and Kushina and Minato are frozen in shock and horror. The full moon shone over the scene as Jiraiya was on his knees with tears running down his face. He suddenly got up and slapped both Kushina and Minato across their faces, snapping them out of their daze, and Kushina suddenly started crying, whispering, my baby, oh my baby, over and over while Minato shook, crying silently. This is your entire fault. If you just cared more about your son than always about your daughters, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Now let's get your son to Tsunade to see what she can do about your up. Jiraiya barked at them, and Kushina cried some more before making her way over to Makoto, who still rocked Naruto back and forth, and she took Naruto's body out her best friend's arms, who was shaking badly. Miko-chan, let's go to the hospital. She never got to finish because Makoto stood up and slapped her across her tear-stained face while glaring daggers at her, a true Uchiha glare that never before was directed at her, and it left her speechless and standing with Naruto's ice-cold body in her arms. You not his mother, or a friend of mine, Makoto said, and walked away before Kushina followed her, silently crying more as she and everyone else made their way to the hospital in silence with the sobs of Hinata loud in their ears. Hospital. Tsunade and Shizune gave up, they really did. They spent a whole day's worth of time with Naruto wasted at the research department, and in the end they got nothing from the stupid rock that seemed to glow brighter, and it was just a ways from illuminating the room. Tsunade sighed that idiot Jiraiya got to see her Naru-chan before her. That was unfair. She mentally pouted. Bang. The doors banged open, and a gasping, teary-eyed Shizune made her look at the door's direction, and what she saw only brought back memories of her past love and dead brother and made her heart boil with anger. Naruto. What the happened to him? Minato. Kushina. Answer me. Tsunade roared in anger, looking at the boy before her who lied in a teary-eyed Kushina's arms, who was rushing to her silently with Makoto lurking with tears behind her and glowing red eyes showing why she was the Uchiha head's wife. I have a guess. Minato said palely as Tsunade turned her deadly golden brown eyes to him and then back to Kushina, and then she slowly looked down at Naruto. He had no pulse. I want a good damn explanation from you. Shizune. Get yourself together. You nurses. Get a goddamn stretcher. Asp. Now. Tsunade yelled the last part, and the nurses ran off and did just that. With Tsunade. Come on, Naruto. Damn it, don't leave me. Beat, you stupid heartbeat. Tsunade thought as tears fell from her eyes, looking down at the small boy that lied before her on a table, and another doctor came to her and shook his head, and she still tried along with Shizune, who also cried. Unknown place. Naruto. Wake up. Open your eyes. Your beautiful eyes. A voice was heard in the endless white around him, and he suddenly found himself lying on lush green grass and a clear blue sky above him. Where am I? Am I dead? Naruto thought, and then there was a laugh sounding like chiming glass bells, and he sat up and looked around until he found the source of the sound. A beautiful woman with bright red hair and violet eyes walked towards him. She was fair and slim. She wore a white robe-like kimono that reached her ankles. Her hair was tied up in two buns on top of her head, and paper tags dangling from the senbon needles poking out on either side of her buns. The kimono was simple with silver and gold designs on it, and she walked barefoot towards him with a mother's smile upon her face, as she helped him stand. Naruto, you are the heir to the Uzumaki legacy. Yes, you have died, but not for long. You are in the realm of choosing. This is the Uzumaki legacy. My name is Mito Uzumaki. I will be explaining to you about your blood rights, however it will be locked in your mind until you gain back what you have lost. The woman said, and with every word she said Naruto felt shocked, happy and confusion. He was happy he was meeting an ancestor, especially since she, from what he read in the history books, was the clan heir until she passed away after the Uzumaki was destroyed and his mother got to the village, yet she never named someone next in line for heir. What do you mean? How can I be the clan's heir? I mean, I didn't do anything, and I don't even know any clan fuinjutsu. This was said with his head drooping in a frown. Mito's mouth frowned downwards and she put her hand on his shoulder. You out of everyone out there, have the true heart and soul of a clan leader. Your intelligence, strategic mind, will and determination, and naturally seeing the good in everything. Even the family that neglected you. Don't take revenge. Just show them what they missed out on but don't forgive them, tolerate but never forget. You face many challenges ahead of you. Mito told him with a small smile upon her lips. Meanwhile in the realm of the living only a few seconds had gone by and Tsunade and Shizune were still trying to revive him but only managed to regenerate some tissue for his arm but they could do nothing about the destroyed chakra coils in his left arm. Outside Kushina and Minato got verbal beatdowns by Makoto and it made them feel like shit while Hinata and Neji refused to leave the hospital until they got word of Naruto while many of the other clans went home shaking their heads at the couple and Itachi sat on the other end perking up every time a doctor walked past. Back in the Uzumaki realm of choosing, Naruto sat listening to what was going on and what was going to happen when he gets sent back. I can't believe this. And no one knew this, only from one clan head to the next. And when I get back my memories of this place will be sealed until I choose of my own will what my next steps will be, and if I don't choose the right one my memories and my heir rights will be wiped clean like my mother. Also there's a glowing purple rock that you sealed a lot of your chakra including half of your soul in. And it will come to me the minute I take the right path. Then now that you told me everything I guess you going to send me back. Naruto asked why was his life so troublesome. In the realm of the living Shikamaru sneezed. Yes but before that remember. About the prophecy, you will regain what you have lost for the future has been foretold or all will be lost for the greater events that will soon happen and the heir of Whirlpool who holds a great burden of hatred will need to rise above all that's against him. Now Naruto are you ready to go back? Mito asked and he nodded remembering the prophecy she told him, that he was a part of. After he nodded Mito leaned forward and placed a kiss on his forehead and watched him slowly get a blank and confused look before fading away. She sighed and rubbed her wrist where a seal was seen. The seal held the Uzumaki's white crest with gold outlines around it. It appeared when she proved herself to her grand-uncle Ashina Uzumaki the eldest brother to her grandfather. She became heir when she was 16 and it seemed so long ago. Realm of the living. Bump. B bump. B bump. Tsunade heard a heartbeat and she let fresh tears fall but in joy. Shizune was in a similar state while all the doctors cheered. After stabilizing him Shizune and Tsunade went to the family to give them the news. She saw Jiraiya sitting with his head between his knees, Minato holding a still crying Kushina while he cried himself, Hinata and Neji sitting by Makoto who promised the Hyugas she'll take care of them. Makoto herself was looking exhausted and sick and you could tell she's been vomiting by the pale shaking hands. Itachi sat a seat away from his mother and Fugaku held a sleeping Sasuke on his lap unconsciously holding Sasuke tighter to him because of what had happened to Naruto he didn't want it to happen with his sons so he decided he'll lay off them. Tsunade cleared her throat and got their attention and they all jumped. He is alive. She said with a tired smile she couldn't help but think there was something else at play here because he had been dead for at least an hour when he got to the hospital and then it took an hour to revive him but she was grateful for little mercies. And we managed to save his arm however the good news stops there. The bad news is that he did die but we revived him in time and he will not be able to use his arm for months. That's where it gets worse. He will never be able to be a ninja his chakra coils are destroyed in his arm and his chakra system was broken and can't be replaced. At this everything was silent before the crying started again. What are we going to tell him? Jiraiya asked softly and no one answered that as until Minato did. As Hokage everyone is banned from saying anything to him about his chakra coils until Kushina or I tell him is that clear? He said and everyone was shocked and while most nodded in acceptance Tsunade, Jiraiya and Makoto angrily stomped off with words of if he asks us we will tell him the truth. With Naruto. Naruto looked at the ceiling, he couldn't remember anything else but that his family had forgotten him and that it showed they obviously don't care. Kushina and Minato walked into the room and watched him and even when they tried talking to him he didn't say anything except facial expressions until he asked how long it would take to use his arm again and after he got his answer he went to sleep. Unknown place. So they finally made their move huh? Well we'll see all the pieces are finally moving, now it's my turn, a dark-eyed man said chuckling before smirking and moving a piece on the shogi board. Was the future really as black and white? Or was there some things lurking between the light and dark side of the equilibrium? A month had passed since the accident. Kushina and Minato just either didn't think Naruto had a right to know about his chakra system or didn't have the heart to crush the boy. While Naruto never asked about why the people around him looked so sympathetic towards him, he did ask when he'll be able to use his arm again because he thought they looked towards him like that because of not being able to use his arm. While his sisters were way more bitchy now because he was getting attention from their parents even if he didn't really want it now. Tsunade, Shizune, Katsum, Bawako, Jiraiya, Anko, Itachi, Neji, Hinata and Makoto came to visit him every now and again and they the only ones he'd smile at, well including Shishu who had only came back from a long mission. Shishu and he weren't close before because the guy was always busy especially since he was in Anbu. However they also became somewhat friends since he was given a leave for 2 months. Though many of the people that actually cared for him weren't there most of the time because they were all very busy and that was understandable being the people they are. Despite everything Naruto still trained without his parents' knowledge of cause after the accident he decided he needed to learn some medic ninjutsu in case something like that happened again. He asked Tsunade and Shizune and they agreed immediately since Tsunade had found him walking up the side of the room walls which she thought impossible but soon she and Shizune started teaching him medical ninjutsu. Senju Compound. Tsunade lay upon her bed and thought about the events that happened and how Naruto was still able to use chakra. She remembered telling Naruto she was just going to give him a checkup and she secretly found out that because Naruto had perfect chakra control for a child and even though she believed he will never be able to use chakra in his body at all she found out because of his control he was able to use the chakra in him but just barely but it saddened her to know she couldn't tell him anything until Minato or Kushina told him. That however didn't mean she wouldn't teach him medical jutsus although secretly just between Naruto, Shizune and herself. She was happy he could at least use some chakra from his broken coils. Thinking about it made her frown maybe he inherited one good thing from Kushina then and that was the Uzumaki healing abilities but even she knew it would take the vitality of someone like her grandmother. Mito, to heal a chakra system that was broken in 20 places these places being his 2 parts by his stomach, 3 parts in his arm that was damaged badly, 7 along his ribs, another 3 in his left leg, 2 in his other arm, 1 by his shoulder blades and 2 near his heart. This really scared her but even above all odds he worked hard to use even a little of his chakra and that put a smile on her face. With Naruto. Naruto smiled lightly. A month ago Makoto found out she was pregnant and when she told him he was so happy for her. Soon Naruto found himself frowning again he obviously was only released from the hospital last month and he was slowly accepting his parents back into his heart unknowingly and his sisters were still trying to direct the attention back to themselves and it was working slowly, it was just a matter of time. Naruto shook his head and thought on better matters like he had learned to cast jutsu with one hand. Now wasn't that cool? Now he could perform jutsu while keeping his other hand free. And he learned or better yet completed his genjutsu that he had been trying to get down the day before his parents forgot him. It was called Mirror. This allowed him to be somewhere without people or the affected person to see or more like ignore his presence and they won't pay him much thought almost as if making himself invisible to that person or people. So it soon became that his favorite thing to do was use his sisters as test subjects for this jutsu because he could make himself invisible to them so even if he was there they wouldn't pay any attention to him. That's unless he made physical contact or spoke too loudly but also he made it so that if you didn't notice him you won't think about him much only in maybe like a passing thought. He made this with the intention of not being noticed so he won't get into trouble and so he could train in peace. He loved this genjutsu and thought if he mastered it one day it could become a base for another genjutsu that would be better than this one but the original had a fault that if someone who wasn't affected by the genjutsu starts up a conversation about the caster. Another thing is the medical ninjutsu, that had taken him a month to get down one jutsu. And although it wasn't grad it was something and the basics are always something to know even if it was E-ranked. Naruto pouted and decided to rather sleep than carry on pondering over the last 2 months. Dream. Naruto suddenly found himself in an empty white abyss and saw a flash of something, then a deep male voice rang out all around him. Strength is power, descendant but strength of the heart is more powerful. Remember, The voice spoke but most parts couldn't be heard and Naruto tried calling out but the voice would speak but then some parts were blocked out so he couldn't hear. Suddenly he found himself falling in a black abyss and he was screaming. There was suddenly a burning in his chest like flames coming out as if to consume him and swallow him whole. End dream. It was 1 in the morning when Naruto awoke startled and breathing hard. He tried to move feeling an incredible pain throughout his body. That's when he noticed Nariko and Nanami both laying besides him with their heads on his chest. Naruto found it hard to breathe let alone demand they get off him so instead with every fiber in his body screaming at him not to move, he wriggled shaking the girls awake. What the hell are you doing in my room? You too Nanami. This was said by a very irritated Nariko for being woken up at such an ungodly hour. Nanami looked confused around the room before looking at her brother then looking at Nariko telling her this was not their rooms and it was his although said harshly the two girls quickly left to their own rooms not paying attention to their very pale brother, who had immediately ran to the basin in his bathroom and started vomiting. Red. That's what Naruto saw all in the basin it was like the tiles were turned red, only that wasn't the case because he knew something was wrong now. Suddenly feeling dizzy he managed to stumble out the bathroom only to fall face first towards his bed and then he knew no more. 3 hours later, Naruto woke up and in his still dizzy state he wandered down the hall but as he pasted his parents' room he heard their voices and he stopped as he heard his name mentioned. Room. Kushina sat on the bed watching Minato get ready to go to the Hokage office. Lately she felt a lot more moody and her stomach was giving her problems, always cramping. She watched Minato slip on his Junin vest and tie his headband on. Minato, when are we going to tell Naruto? I mean we've been putting it off all this time and it keeps his hopes up and being more hopeful. She said sighing and Minato came and sat beside her and slowly stroked her hair and she leaned in towards him. Kushina, we'll tell him soon okay. But we can't right now come out and say, hey Naruto, don't take it the wrong way but using my influence as Hokage, I told everyone not to tell you that you will never reach your dreams because your arm's chakra coils are completely destroyed and your entire network has been broken into almost 20 places so you will never be able to use chakra or become a ninja ever. Yeah Kushina I doubt that would play out well especially since we messed up big time with most of our friends because of the accident. This was said in a dry tone with a very blank look and Kushina sighed wondering why things couldn't be easier. Naruto. Naruto's mouth was on the floor. He wasn't going to be a ninja again because of them. That wasn't fair. Slowly tears pooled in his eyes falling to the floor and he ran out not caring that he was still a bit dizzy. He ran pasted everything and everyone. He had soon ran into a forbidden district, where a lot of the Kyuubi's chakra that wasn't sealed fast enough lurked. Why didn't they tell me? Did I not have the right to know? How could they? I hate them. I hate this place. I wish I can just leave and never come back. Naruto cried out to the heavens in anguish as he held his arm. Naruto cried on his knees holding his arm. The complete anguish in his sobs was the only sounds ringing in the clearing. Suddenly green chakra came swirling all around the clearing from the forest. This was also a type of healing chakra but only if it had to, though it never found much that perked its interest. But Naruto didn't notice this because his eyes were shut as if in pain as his heart clenched painfully in his chest. Soon without him noticing the swirling mass of green chakra covered him completely. This chakra was what had consumed the Kyuubi's chakra and turned it into its own. The chakra had one instinct and that was to find out why this boy was in such a state never having sensed such before. So when it touched him it was shocked being leftover chakra that was just left around after people died it had felt loss and pain but never a broken soul to this extent. The green chakra disappeared but having a bit of a mind its own it decided to watch this boy being curious as to why this boy had dark wisps of red chakra in his system that was seemingly killing him slowly from the inside and was oddly like the Kyuubi's chakra. Sometime later after 2 hours of non-stop crying and screaming Naruto decided to get himself together and stood up looking for the first time at his surroundings and saw a few buildings that looked a bit old and not maintained so in childish anger and curiosity he walked into a random building and looked around. The place was a mess with rats and insects running about. Growing even more curious he followed a hallway and came to a staircase leading down, so he walked down slowly only to see a few doors here and there until something caught his eyes. It was a wall on the right it looked a bit skew so he walked up to the wall and pushed. At first it didn't budge, after a second time it crumbled in on itself, showing a hallway. Naruto followed it without thinking, and some of the green chakra that decided to just rest a little in his arm that was in the sling, grew weary at the feel of the place. Soon he came upon a room. It looked like some kind of messed up lab. There was a bed in the middle like one from hospitals, only this was matted with blood, dried blood. There were about 20 different bottled liquids of different colors with funny writing on them that was faded. Then there was 2 basins on the other side. All in all, the place gave off a bad vibe. Naruto walked around a bit until he decided to see what those bottles contained. He took one off the shelf and tried to read it, but instead it slipped, and without thinking he tried to catch it, only it ended up cutting his unusable hand and watched it heal up quickly after the liquid sunk into the wounds. Naruto yelped and checked his arm, and he felt like he could move it a bit. In an act of complete hope and stupidity, he collected all the bottles and poured the sink full of the stuff, leaving the bottles empty and on one side. He mixed it with a piece of broken wood. Once he was satisfied, he unwrapped all the bandages and braced himself. Ah! He let out a scream as the liquid burned his arm. He quickly fell to the floor, mentally shouting at himself for being stupid. Why did you do that? Ah! It hurts so much. You just had to get hopeful and do that. You idiot. How you gonna leave Konoha now if you gonna die? Please. Someone help me. Please. These were Naruto's thoughts before he blacked out from the pain. The green chakra in his arm was panicked. The first thing that spilled into the wounds was dealt with quickly, but also took quite a bit effort, leaving the green chakra with hardly anything left because of how strong that acid was. And now this. Just when it was getting more curious about the boy, so it did the only thing it could do. It called on all the other green chakra that lie bored around the place to help it save the person it was curious about. The other green chakra responded and were there in no time. All the chakra surrounded Naruto and forced itself into the boy. Naruto could be thankful that this chakra was trying to help him and that his coils were broken in those 20 places, otherwise this could have turned out very badly for him. However, no one would ever expect the future outcome of this. Hokage's office. I want all Junin here ASAP. There was a sudden chakra surge in the condemned areas that are still going down to be rebuilt, and we need to know exactly what happened and how it happened. Minato was not happy as he yelled out orders to his assistant. Kushina stood off to the side while Jiraiya leaned against the wall with a frown. All these things were frustrating Minato out. How could there be such a strong surge? I know it didn't come from the girls. I was with them the whole day until you called me here. This was said by a very worried Kushina, who had indeed been with the girls training them in weapons. Jiraiya grunted and Minato sighed. Naruto. Naruto groaned. He was suddenly stunned with his memories of what happened and how it happened. He suddenly slapped himself hard. Ow! How could I have been so stupid? Shit, ow, what the hell? Everything hurts. What happened? This was Naruto's thoughts as he shifted from the floor until his eyes widened comically and he let out a yell. What the heck? Omgosh. My other arm works. Kami. I think that stuff in the bottles did this. Ah, stupid Naruto. Stupid. You really shouldn't have done that. This is what was shouted out as the boy slapped himself with both hands when he had realized both his hands were working, but also let out a whoop and started cheering until he remembered why he was so angry and sad, and then he frowned and blinked away the oncoming tears. How am I going to explain this? Wait a minute, I said I was gonna leave this hellhole and never come back. So I'll only hide this with the bandages. As he thought this, Naruto quickly performed one-hand seals for a henge in case there were other changes and felt like the blockage of his coils wasn't there anymore. After performing the henge, he looked at himself in a broken mirror and nodded happy to himself. He decided to figure everything out when he left Konoha. Quickly Naruto left, not noticing that the basin was empty and the teams of Junin around the area. As he was on his way back to the compound, he found out he's been out for a day and a half, and he started rushing away until he saw some girls surrounding a pink-headed girl. They were all bullying this girl. Suddenly he felt anger build up in him and stormed their way. Hey, what's going on here? Leave her alone. Go home. After he said this, all the girls scattered at the anger in his voice never heard before, so they were all quick to run away. This left Naruto alone with the pink-headed girl who was crying in the middle of the park. Hey, are you okay? What's your name? I'm Naruto. Why was those girls bothering you? Naruto asked gently, sitting down in front of the girl, and she sniffed and shook her head. You not here to tease me, are you? she asking softly, stuttering and looking at him with emerald green eyes, making him blink and shake his head. I'm Sakura. Haruno and they always tease me about my forehead. I don't know why I have a big forehead. It's not my fault. She yelled before sobbing into her knees with her body shaking, and Naruto patted her head with the hand that wasn't damaged before he fixed it. I'm sorry, your forehead isn't that big. They lying to you just because you must be really smart. He told her, smiling softly, and she looked up with hopeful eyes. Here, take this, he said, pulling out a purple string that he used as a bookmark from his pocket and tied it double on her wrist. I'm going home now, bye. Naruto said, waving at her, and she smiled a little smile and wiped her tears away. Bye Naruto-kun, she yelled, her voice cracking a little from all her crying. Later that night, when Naruto got home, the place was empty and no one was around, so he went to his room and undid the hinge and looked in the mirror and noticed some differences. First, his hair now had black streaks along with the blonde, his eyes stayed the same but looked more intensive than before, and his whisker marks were a bit lighter now and looked like they would fade as he grew older. He quickly noticed that there was more of a curve in his face, giving it a bit of a sharper look than before, and he looked just a bit older with his features and hardly like his father or mother now, and he was glad for that. Wow, I wonder if it was because of that medication that I'm like this now. Maybe I should try and see if my jutsus still work properly. Naruto thought, admiring his new looks before making a shadow clone that he learned how to make when he secretly watched Kushina teach it to the girls. So he spent the rest of the day checking if his genjutsus worked still and if the medical ninjutsu also worked, and also the Academy 3 along with a little fuinjutsu. During this time he found himself able to go on for a while without getting chakra exhausted. He managed to figure out casting genjutsu was easier now and didn't need way too much concentration like before, and his little bit of ninjutsu he had, which was only 5 in all, low C ranked, he learned them from watching Minato train the girls before his injury. The jutsus were all stronger and took less time to do. Once again he was struggling with something he picked up. It was that he had a slight chakra sense and figured that out when Kushina came home, and he got a jolt of surprise when he felt her chakra in the house. This added to Naruto's building questions, and he decided to rather keep the henge up until he buys some blonde dye so no one notices before he leaves, which he decided would be the weekend because he wanted to get more of a feel to his slightly new appearance and abilities, also to get supplies together and plan an escape. Unknown. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a woman wearing a blue dress banged a wooden desk in frustration. She wore a scowl on her face as she read the scroll again. 100 children killed, 1,000 men and women killed. 12 ice users from the Yuki clan. 20 Hazuka clan members. Others, all smaller clans, dead in different ways. Naruto woke up earlier than he has in the past. It was Tuesday. He remembered everything that happened and what has changed his attitude with living in Konoha. He sat up slowly and yawned while rubbing his eyes. Looking in the mirror of his bathroom, his hair was now dyed full blonde again. He had changed nothing else of his new appearance, but none of the changes were truly noticeable unless you look carefully. After brushing his teeth and taking a bath, he wrapped up the arm that used to be damaged so no one would grow suspicious and got dressed in a black shirt and gray shorts. He put his left arm in the sling and went out of the compound to make his way to an empty training ground to start planning his escape by looking at the patrols and time. So if I time it properly, around this time I could get out. Then again I would not get far, unless I take this route. This could possibly work. He thought hard about the timing and where the patrols lapsed, as well as how many were on duty and how it would conflict with the plan he had, yet also how it could fit in. By noon he was dead tired because he had spent a long time by the training grounds planning. However, he had gotten hungry long before his plan was put together, so he ended up going to Ichiraku Ramen and got some vegetable ramen for a late breakfast before he headed to the library looking for Konoha's layout, and it took quite a while to find it, so after studying it he made a copy of it by drawing it and put the original back. Then he went for a snack. He got home early so that he could start on his letter to Tsunade and had to suffer through dinner with his family, with Kushina chatting happily with Noriko and Nanami while Minato smiled and nodded, only responding when he had to. There were shadows under the two adults' eyes, yet they pretended to be fine, but Naruto of course ignored all of them for his own restraints. Later that night he once again dreamt about that voice saying the same thing, which made him confused and irritated. Day 2. Waking up and stretching before doing his morning routine for himself. He soon after dressed then bandaged his not-so-damaged arm up and put it in the sling. Leaving the house and compound was easy to do. He went to the training grounds to train a little before anyone came around and then also worked on his escape plans by checking out different escape routes and decided that the front gate was the best option when using the plan he had in mind. By the time he got home he was way too tired to sit around with his family and play the brother and son in the house. So he just took his dinner and ate in his room ignoring the rest of them. After eating he made 2 storage scrolls and packed up 5 of his shirts and 5 pants and shorts, along with 2 pairs of ninja sandals. He sealed all that in the one scroll and put it in a black backpack that had many pockets. He went to sleep early because it was just 2 days before he left and he needed to plan out everything properly. Day 3. He performed the same morning ritual that he has for the past 2 days before leaving. This time however he went to the market using a henge. He took all his money he had saved up from his parents and Tsunade. He ended up spending 3 hours at the market buying rations, a few bottles of water, a medical kit, a sewing kit, a set of sharp kunai and shurikens as well as a roll of exploding tags. Going to an alley he sealed all the new supplies in the other storage scroll he made and undid the henge before getting some breakfast. The money was all what he got in the monthly allowances which was 100 yen for the month however with him collecting and saving since he was 5. Going bad to the compound once again he decided to skip supper and went to his room. He sat at his desk and pulled out the letter he was going to leave for Tsunade and read over it for the 5th time since he wrote it. Tomorrow night, the night when everyone will be occupied with his escape plan going off, that's when he'll leave. He would have enough time from the morning to set up his plan. Naruto sighed softly. Why couldn't they just tell me? They could have at least made amends by telling me and helping me through it, but instead they kept it from me. I can't go back now. I have completely lost all the trust I had in them. I will leave tomorrow and I will never come back. And if I do, I'll prove how much of a better person I am. As he thought this, his emotions swirled. One part of him believed deep down that maybe they still loved him, but the other part argued if they loved him even a little they would have said something or comforted him a little like they do to Noriko and Nanami. So with his inner struggle, the side that no longer wanted them as a family won and he steeled himself, determined not to hold on anymore because after all they have done, what forgiveness do they deserve? So despite his determination to keep his grudge against them, he had made up his choice of leaving and not staying and snapping at them, making himself look like a brat. That night Naruto dreamt of being free and the last string that kept him attached to the Namakazes was broken. He was going to make a name for himself, and if any Namikaze came in his way again he'd make sure they would be sorry because he will never forgive or forget the emotional hurt they put him through. Day 4. Escape. Getting up and doing his morning routine, he took the bag pack and left the compound as fast as he could while they were all sleeping. He went to the library and pulled out a roll of paper bombs and put 3 of them on different walls of the library without anyone noticing because of the genjutsu he used, which was mirror. As quickly and quietly as possible he left the library and cancelled the genjutsu he used. His next stop was the market. Namikaze compound. From the minute Kushina woke she had a sense of dread in the pit of her stomach, but she ignored it in favor of making breakfast for her family. As she flipped the pancakes she thought about Naruto. She completely pushed away the thought of having neglected her only son. No, I never neglected him. He was just always so quiet and caused trouble. That's why we sometimes forget about him or ignore him. After all, I never raised him to be disrupted. The only reason he can't play pranks now is because of his arms, so the girls must be mistaking some other child's pranks for Naruto's. Yeah, that must be it. As she thought upon this, the girls ran down the staircase and into the kitchen with big smiles on their faces, making herself smile as well. Naruto. After putting about several exploding tags multiple places in the market where people won't really get hurt, he made his way to the hospital and put some tags around there before going and doing the same to the Hokage Tower with the last few tags without anyone noticing him. Naruto soon made his way to Ikiraku's ramen stand and got himself a few bowls of miso ramen. Tsunade-ka-san will be mad at me for making her worry, but the letter will let her know I'm okay. I'm going to leave, but will I survive? No one's going to be there to save me. I'm going to be on my own, but I'll get lonely. I wonder if I'll make friends. Naruto thought upon this slightly fearful. After all, he was only just a child and he could only hope that his intellectual mind would help him. Drinking the miso soup, he thanked the father-daughter duo who watched him with worried. Naruto walked out the stand with the black backpack slung over his back and looked up at the sky as a soft breeze blew by, ruffling his blonde hair. The sun stood dead still in the sky, indicating that it was 12 now. Naruto turned away and made his way into a forest by a nearby training ground, looking for a stream to use a dye remover to wash out the blonde dye. He had planned everything out as best as he could. Now all he had to do was put this plan in motion and make his escape. 10 hours later, a boy in black, who was identified as Naruto with his streaks in his hair, moved around in the shadows as quickly and silently as he could. As he made his way to the front gates of Konoha with a black backpack slung over his back, he stood in the shadow of the wall making his chakra signal as small as he could. Then he made a hand sign and sent out a small pulse of chakra and then hanged into a rat at the same time as casting his genjutsu, mirror, on the guards by the gate. Boom! Was the sound of all the paper bombs going off, which was also Naruto's signal to leave when the gate guards jumped looking for the problem that caused the explosion. So hanged as a rat, Naruto hightailed it out of Konoha gates, hiding a good distance away from the place that tried to destroy his dreams, in between some tree roots. Namikaze compound. Minato lied in his bed next to Kushina thinking about Naruto. Come to think of it, I haven't seen him the whole day. I wonder if Kushina has. As he thought this, an explosion went off, startling Kushina awake. Minato. What's going on? There was just an explosion. Oh my god. Where are the girls? Kushina asked frantically as she jumped up and quickly got dressed in some pants and a top and grabbed her weapons. Minato quickly did the same and the two of them rushed to the girls' rooms. Getting to their rooms, they found the girls shaking and awake with confused and fearful looks on their faces. Unknown to them, in their panicked haste, they fell back into their routine of easily forgetting their son. Ka-san, Tu-san, what's going on? What happened? Was that an explosion? Is the village under attack? The two girls shot off questions one after each other. It seems like it, but don't worry, angels. Tu-san and Ka-san will protect you. Kushina told the girls, comforting them as an ambush showed up and started speaking to Minato. Kushina, let's go, we need it at the office. The village is going on lockdown for the next few days until a proper investigation is done. Let's go, we need to get to the bottom of this, and soon. After Minato said this, Kushina nodded and said goodbye to the girls and they both disappeared in a yellow flash together. Naruto. After waiting a few minutes, he undid the hinge and started running as fast as he could in the direction which was the borders of Fire Country as it had stated on the map he had with him. He still held his breath, hoping that the village will be put on lockdown for an investigation so he could get out of the country as fast and as safely as he could without being noticed. As he sprinted further away using his chakra to stick on the branches, he could not help but feel a bit of guilt from running away, but he pushed that aside. He needed to think about himself for a change. Hokage Tower. The people occupying the meeting room were in utter chaos and disorder, with clan heads and civilians shouting and fighting among each other, and that is the scene Minato and Kushina flashed into. The chaos only settled down by seeing their Hokage and his wife. Hokage-sama, Kushina-sama. What's going on? Are we being attacked? Have you caught anyone yet? Do you know who did this? These were the questions fired off by the civilian council members, one being especially loud was Haruno Mebuki, which made some of the more sensitive clan heads wince at the loudness. Silence. Firstly, it would seem like we are being attacked. Secondly, we do not know who the culprit is. Thirdly, what we do know is that the library, hospital, area around this tower and the market was targeted. Other than that, no other places have been bombed with explosive tags. This is a worrying factor, so the village will be on lockdown for the next few days until an investigation is done. Dismissed. After explaining this to the council, they accepted it and Minato and Kushina left to his office. Naruto. Naruto stood panting. He felt like he had been running forever, much longer than he could keep up. He pulled out the map and estimated that he was about halfway to the border of Fire Country, and like someone lifted a weight off his shoulders, he slumped over under the tree he was standing under. After all, he had been running right through the night, only taking short breaks every now and then. Soon he fell asleep under the tree hidden behind some of the bigger roots. 8 hours later, By the time Naruto woke up again, he could see by the sky and sun that it was probably late afternoon, and he mentally smacked himself out of his sheer forgetfulness with his situation. What if the village sent out Anbu already? And they could have caught him. What if they caught me? Ah, they'll drag me back and lock me up. I forgot about that. Naruto thought as he looked around for anything suspicious before pulling out a bottle of water and drinking some up, then he put it away and stretched. It wasn't long before the sun set and he was on the move again, moving only as fast as his still sore muscles allowed him to. Konoha. Tsunade was stuck once again in the research lab looking over some new poisons that Shizune and her were trying to break down in various parts. She had heard the explosions and a Chunin had come running to Shizune and herself just to tell them not to worry and that for now the village was on lockdown. It made her angry to no end, but she had her duty along with Shizune in the research lab for future reference, and she understood that, which is why she ended up working along with Shizune to the bone for the next 3 days. However, on her desk back at the Senju compound there lied a not so innocent looking envelope waiting to be opened and let out all its secrets. Naruto. 2 days had passed since he left Konoha, 2 hard days of running non-stop even when his muscles protesting, and now he was almost to the border, just a few meters away from freedom, and in a fast sprint he crossed it as fast as he could. He was now on the border of sand. Suddenly the wide grin that stretched across his face twisted into one of pain and he dropped to the ground in pain, clutching his head with both hands. He felt like his head would explode in a shower of gore and he couldn't stop it. His scream of pain was cut off in his throat when he blacked out. 1 hour later, waking up to a splitting headache was something Naruto had become used to. After all, reading throughout the night about chakra arts had both its pros and cons. However, Naruto had the worst headache yet. His eyes hurt, ears hurt, and most of all he felt like he had been introduced to a hard book cover meeting his face, but checking out by feeling his face he could tell nothing was broken. So as he sat up, suddenly everything came rushing back to him. Mito, the Purple Rock, him being the chosen heir for the Uzumaki clan, their legacy, the prophecy that he didn't care about, and having his memories sealed and the reasons behind getting them sealed. He let out a shaky breath and looked up to the sky and closed his eyes in reminisce, completely understanding why this had been the right decision. Flashback. I'm going to start with the Uzumaki legacy. It all started back just before the 6 paths of Sage died. You see, the 6 parts of Sage had a dream to keep the world in peace, but he knew he was too old to continue doing that, so he passed his dream on to his sons, Indra and Asura. Indra was a prodigy from the start, however Asura was slow learning and was accused of having no talent. Yet as they grew older, Asura pushed and worked hard to learn the things he did and believed that love and friendship was the key to peace, while Indra never worked as hard as his younger brother and believed power and control is what was needed for peace. When their father died, he chose Asura for his successor because he too believed in love and friendship. However, Indra was enraged and jealous, so he was easily controlled by Black Zetsu, who also changed the table that spoke of the truth, which was passed on to Indra's descendants, the Uchiha. Indra had started a war with Asura in which their descendants carried on, not knowing why they fought in the first place. Asura's descendants, the Senju and Uzumaki, fought for many years against the Uchiha until Asura's reincarnation Hashirama Senju, my belated husband, was born and decided to start the village of Konoha with Madara Uchiha, Indra's reincarnation, who agreed for his people. They brought about peace to the lands once again until Madara grew jealous that Hashirama was chosen to be Kage and caused chaos. However, his clan abandoned him in his streak of jealousy because they wanted peace. So Hashirama and Madara faced off. However, Madara overstepped his boundaries and controlled the Kyuubi with his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. So in an act of desperation I used my special chakra chains to seal the Kyuubi within myself. Hashirama ended up winning and Madara apparently died, and Hashirama died in the war. Now once again the cycle of hatred is repeating itself, and according to tales you have been chosen to be Asura's reincarnation and Uchiha Sasuke as Indra's. Mito explained all this without pause, and Naruto's eyes widened a bit comically at the last bit. Me and Makoto Ka-san's younger son Sasuke. Itachi's brother. We gonna end up fighting. How? I don't understand. Why must he be that guy's reincarnation? Why am I Asura's reincarnation? Why? Naruto rambled on until Mito made him keep quiet with a look that made him quiet very quickly. It's just how it is. Not even we know how to predict who becomes the reincarnation. Yes, you might likely fight him, but then again, Perhaps the cycle may be broken this time and free the souls of this endless hatred, but I don't know if it will really be possible, so that's not a standing possibility. However, now what I'm about to tell you is the Uzumaki legacy. Asura had 2 children after he had traveled the land and settled down with a young woman who ended up birthing these twins. One was a girl, the other a boy. Their names were Hitomi and Hiro. They both grew up watching their father and uncle fight and also took on their father's dreams. The girl, Hitomi, was talented in manipulation of the earth and could grow trees, make rivers and heal with chakra. The boy Hiro was talented in the art of sealing, sword play and possessed a special type of chakra. The two had married off and created their own clans, Senju by Hitomi and Uzumaki by Hiro. While fighting their cousins and distant cousins, Hiro created 2 katanas for himself to use, which was made with his chakra and the strongest metals known to man. One blade is black as a raven, the other is white as snow. Both grips were gold and blood red with 2 little rubes dangling on each end. They both bore the white Uzumaki swirl and had writing engraved on their blades. Later he created 4 other weapons. Also there is a prophecy that goes as such: the air of the whirlpool with a great burden will bring about a great change when the eye of the moon endangers the world. That's the prophecy. Mito took a breath after having spoken so much and let Naruto take in what she said. Then I will get stronger and prove to everyone I can do it. And I'll do it all without Minato and Kushina. What about these weapons? Where are they and how can I find them? And how do you know all this? Naruto asked and said, determined get stronger and prove to himself and everyone he can do it without his family. However, Mito cut in quickly when she seen this. Naruto, don't let that be your goal, please. I have seen some go down a road like that and it's not pretty. Make your own goals and build bonds, make friends, try to be happy and overcome the grudge you hold for your birth family, make your own family with friends and allies. The weapons are all scattered around the elemental nations. However, Hiro's own twin katanas lie in an underwater cave at the bottom of Uzu's biggest whirlpool. You can also learn sealing by spending a few months in the Uzu ruins. I'm sure you will learn much. However, I have not been to Uzu since I was married to Hashirama, so I don't know how things are there. So be careful. There should also be a journal about the other weapons and how to find them. Also, Uzu is on an island in Nami no Kuni. And I know all this because it's all in the journal in the cave with the katanas. Once she was done telling him all this, she smiled lightly at the boy before her, who looked between amazement, curious and irritated. Okay, I'll try, but I dunno if I can after all they have done and all the times they ignored me for my sisters. So I can't promise, but I'll try and I'll find the cave with the katanas and that journal. And I will try to be happy as well as protect the people I care for. He said proudly, and she smiled once again, only wider than the last one. One more thing, there is a chamber where the most treasured things are held and no one knows about it other than the clan head and the heir. She then went on telling him about what happened to Kushina and how he should choose the right steps. All things only passed on from one clan head to the next, which put Naruto in a more somber mood when she told him that in Konoha there is a purple rock that contains most of her chakra and half of her soul, and that his memories will come back of this place with her as soon as he has chosen the right decision. Which was leaving to get stronger and prove himself, but also not to act upon his grudge against his family and those who aided his sisters by snapping like he would if he continued in Konoha. Naruto sat listening to what was going on and what was going to happen when he gets sent back. I can't believe this, and no one knew this, only from one clan head to the next. And when I get back, my memories of this place will be sealed until I choose of my own will what my next steps will be. And if I don't choose the right one, my memories and my heir rights will be wiped clean like my mother. Also, there's a glowing purple rock that you sealed a lot of your chakra, including half of your soul in. And it will all come back to me the minute I make the right decision. Then now that you told me everything, I guess you going to send me back? Naruto asked why was his life so troublesome. In the realm of the living, Shikamaru sneezed. Yes, but before that, remember what I said about the prophecy and you will regain what you have lost, and remember you are the heir, so get stronger on your own terms. Now Naruto, are you ready to go back? Mito asked, and he nodded, remembering the prophecy she told him that he was a part of. After he nodded, Mito leaned forward and placed a kiss on E's forehead and watched him slowly get a blank and confused look before fading away. Flashback end. The dazed look in Naruto's eyes faded away slowly as he stood up and pulled out the map he made and looked it over briefly for Nami no Kuni because that was his destination right now. To get to Uzu and find the twin katanas and the journal, then learn more about Fuinjutsu, the art of sealing, and also find and seal everything of value in Uzu into a scroll so no one can stumble across the land and just claim that which is not theirs. He put the map away and moved in the direction stated on the map. Konoha. Senju Tsunade was not a woman with time on her hands because she was always busy with this and with that, and she only just got home, only to find an envelope on her desk signed by Naruto. So naturally wanting to see why her son figure left a letter instead of coming to see her personally. After all, she did give him an estimate as to when she'll be free again after looking over poisons and finishing her paperwork. So she picked it up, yet as she opened it a sense of dread filled her to the brim. To Tsunade Ka-san, if you are reading this, it means that 3 days has passed since I left the village, which was the reasons there was explosions that was because of me to use as a distraction to get out of Konoha and Fire Country with pursuits. I am sorry to leave behind those who care for me, but after finding out my career and dreams have been crushed by my family and trying to hide it from me. I just can't stand that anymore, all the lies and hiding things from me, it was honestly the last straw for me. I just want to get away from it all, but don't worry about me, I will survive and I will keep my dreams, maybe someday I will see you and the others again. I love you and I will miss all of you a lot, and don't look for me. P.S. Tell Makoto Ka-san I'm sorry I won't be there when the baby is born. Love, Naruto. Tsunade was in tears as she read this letter over and over again. Words just could not find their way out her mouth and she let out a choked sob, dropping the letter and stumbling back just as Shizune opened the door. Tsunade didn't even realize Shizune had been knocking for the past few minutes on her door until she had opened the door and rushed to Tsunade asking what was wrong, but as the tears fell she could only stare at the letter on the floor. Shizune, seeing where her mentor's gaze was, she went to the letter and picked it up and read it and let out her own sob as tears fell and ran out the house and compound heading to the Hokage Tower. Hokage Tower. Minato was currently in a meeting with the council discussing a few details about the attack 3 days ago. Jiraiya and Kushina stood to his sides as he addressed the clan heads who had to bring their wives along and the civilian heads who did the same. Itachi, Shishu, Kakashi and Anko stood in the shadows in their Anbu uniforms. So after looking through everything we have come to the conclusion that the attack, Minato never got to finish as Shizune knocked down the doors with brute strength that she hardly used and walked right up to him with tears falling from her eyes before slamming a letter down on his desk, almost breaking it. You miserable excuse of parents, how could you let this happen? This was shouted out by Shizune as she gripped his collar and pointed down at the letter. When Kushina came to pull her away she backhanded her and the mark quickly turning blue while everyone in the room was looking shocked. This is not the sweet soft Shizune they knew because she had a murderous aura around her. You want to know who caused the explosions? Read it out loud for everyone to hear. She screamed at him and he was so shocked he quickly obeyed her and picked up the letter to read it. To Tsunade Ka-san, if you are reading this it means that 3 days has passed since I left the village, which was the reasons there was explosions that was because of me to use as a distraction to get out of Konoha and Fire Country with pursuits. I am sorry to leave behind those who care for me, but after finding out my career and dreams have been crushed by my family and trying to hide it from me. I just can't stand it anymore, all the lies and hiding things from me, it was honestly the last straw for me. I just want to get away from it all. But don't worry about me, I will survive and I will keep my dreams, maybe someday I will see you and the others again. I love you and I will miss all of you a lot, and don't look for me. P.S. Tell Makoto Ka-san I'm sorry I won't be there when the baby is born. Love, Naruto. Minato only realized what he just read after he uttered his only son's name, and he also realized he still had a meeting going on. Minato, Kushina, what in the world is wrong with you? Your only son. My god, son. Kami-sama, you have forsaken your own son. Jiraiya yelled at his disciple in anger and disapproval, completely forgetting there were others in the room because he was simply too angry. The Toad Sage briefly recalled figuring the chosen one was his godson and not someone else because of the similar things that old Toad has said that reminded him of Naruto. The room quickly went into an uproar when everything finally settled in. Shizune still wore her angry face, so did a very pregnant Makoto, while Katsum and Bawako stood back with deep frowns on their faces. Meanwhile, Kushina was crying as she backed up against the wall and slid down holding her head in her hands. Things just went from bad to terrible. If only your son meant as your daughters do to you, maybe he'd still be here. Makoto yelled at Kushina while the tears fell furiously down her face and her pale skin was flushed red with anger.